My phone is locked. That's what I was just thrown off about. Like, it was literally on a black screen.
Alright. Welcome back. Crew Talk episode 3. Got a pretty special guest, one of my best friends, Tunde Ahmad, double Ivy League graduate and aspiring journalist. Thanks for coming on.
Man, it's a long time coming. Something we've been
been
talking about for a minute since we was in undergrad. So,
Yeah.
go have me on this now.
So I want you to start off just by telling people your story, how you got to where you are, a little bit of background.
Background, born and raised in Oakland, East Oakland, California to be exact. I went through the public school system there. My mama was a public school teacher for a majority of my life before she then did a program to become an elementary school principal at an Oakland public school. And my pops did not go to college, but he was a mechanic for the local bus company. Youngest out of 6 kids, all of us went through the public school district, public school system. And then, senior year, I was just applying like everybody do, kind of on a whim to go to Yale and all these other Ivy Leagues, and it just ended up working out for us. But it wasn't, a just straightforward path. There was a lot of stuff along the way to get there, which I'm sure we'll probably get into later on in this podcast. But
So we get into it right now because, I don't really have that big of an audience yet, but kind of going wherever with the conversation. Just like, see who picks up on it. So going from Oakland, going from New Orleans to Yale's kind of the same story, but I haven't really given my story on here. So how was that transition, and like how was it like, just like being from two different completely worlds?
Yeah, I think, I know something we talked about a bunch just from the get-go when we got there freshman year was how people didn't really understand the type of environments we came from. So when you go from places where it's like, if you Google, we was just talking about your school being in the news for how
the wrong stuff.
Right, but it was this stuff that was normal to us, whether it be the way people talk, activities in the community. One of the big things we was talking about at Yale was just being politically correct and being like considerate of how other people may interpret things. There was a certain stuff that back home, and going to a public school in Oakland, I wasn't thinking about that type of stuff. So when we get on campus and the stuff that we would just say, normally not even super offensive stuff, but just be like,
not as like aware of like how other people view certain things.
But in the same way, it was like a lot of people didn't give us the benefit of the doubt or the opportunity to understand where we were coming from. It was like, well, this is Yale now, this is this elite, politically correct culture, this is what you can do, this is what you can't. And it put people in a weird situation, and kind of made it polarized sometimes. Because if I come, we just talk mess to each other, just roast each other all day. Maybe people weren't used to hearing folks just talk about each other in a way that is not out of a malicious intent, but it's out of like, it's really just out of love. We'll talk mess all day, nonstop, about video games, about
how you look, how you dress,
everything. And people would just maybe turned off to that, and because they don't come from a background where they understand that it's from a place of endearment. It's not from a place of I'm trying to hurt your feelings. So
first when we were there, it was definitely like super annoying having to like balance that, but I also feel like hindsight is always 20/20. Like going through that and like navigating through that made us that much more educated for like when we're in, I guess, the real world. Because I wouldn't consider college the real world, but definitely skills that like you wouldn't get from going to like a state school or maybe an HBCU where everyone has like the exact same background. But definitely really appreciative of it. But it was definitely an eye-opening experience. That we weren't ready for, or didn't expect to see.
We weren't. By the time we graduated, we had an understanding for it, and it wasn't like that was necessarily the right way, because I still don't feel like the way that college functioned was a realistic reflection of how society is. Because I'm like, we normalizing the president that call people out their name, calling black women filthy mouth, whatever, you know what I'm saying? Like filthy mouth wife and shithole countries and all of this. And I'm like, y'all see, this is the president, and this is how he is speaking. So what example does that say? And I'm not saying that that should be a standard. I'm just saying that at school, if somebody was to do that, they would be ex-commed, or if a professor was to say that, they would be kicked out. And I was just saying, not saying that they shouldn't, but
it was like the punishment in a less realistic society was more severe than the actual reality.
And that is a very controlled environment, but the real world often didn't function like that. So,
yeah,
you know, you pick and choose your battles. For most of us, I feel like we didn't really care that much to go down the road and debate people all day on stuff. It was more so, you know, we respect it, we understand, we learn from it, but
it wasn't like we were there to debate it. Like, it was that pressing. It was more like a go as you please and like engage wherever.
Exactly. Especially when you got more pressing issues affecting you in your everyday real world life.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things I don't think people also had an understanding for. A lot of people went to Yale and then that just became their world, and their world only functioned within that because back home they came from a 2-parent household that had a steady stream of income, and they weren't worried about how they were going to pay for school, or
they're like a very like isolated life to where like where they were was the only thing that mattered.
Exactly. And that applied to more than just, I don't want people to think that I'm just talking about wealthy white students. It's also applied to wealthy black students, because it was not, even within the black community, there was not a lot of people who came from middle working class or lower economic backgrounds. There was a lot of folks who were like, I was surprised to meet people, black people, who were legacy students at Yale. Of course, it was nowhere near as many black legacy students as white legacy students, but even still, that was something like I didn't know what black wealth looked like. I hadn't stepped on the Ivy League campus, met anybody who went to an Ivy League campus until we got accepted. So it was something that, like, you know, for other folks, if you legacy, this is what's normalized for you, and I feel like folks don't really recognize that. Not saying, I guess what we was been talking about, for example, when I came to college, my brother was incarcerated at the time. So I'm like, I could be in a room full of people and I get a call from my brother, and I'm like, I'll see y'all in a minute, because I know that this blocked number or this unknown number is him. But I go have a whole conversation with him, and now I'm in the mindset of like, damn, my brother still got a whole year, a whole 2 years left in prison for something that he really didn't do. And then I come back into the thing, and people are, you know what I'm saying, talking about something that's not even important and complaining about it, going on and on about.
It's funny how, like, there's obviously like a demographic at Yale that like people like stereotype that is there, but there's just so many like different backgrounds and stories, even though it might be like smaller pockets of the campus or the community. But it's definitely like a really diverse thing, and I feel like people watching this will be like, wow, like, it's not just all white nerds, like a few black kids sprinkled here. It's like a whole like different community with a whole bunch of different stuff going on that we just didn't know about.
Exactly. And I think people a lot of times would give us whatever flack for like, oh, why do y'all only hang out with the like thing, or classify us as thinking we're too cool or whatever. But it's like, it was never us being excluding other folks from hanging out with us. It's just like we wanted that controlled environment where we could say what we wanted. We could talk mess to each other and call each other out our names, and you know what I'm saying, play video games and just talk about rap music. And
basically just like finding people who were similar to you.
Exactly.
In a, like, not necessarily a hostile environment, but like an environment that was like where you were far removed from.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think that's what made not only us two, but just like a lot of our friend groups really close, because we just had that shared understanding, and none of us was from the same area. Like, I didn't know anybody else from Oakland. It was who else was? Marcus was from New Orleans.
Only person.
And then like Zach was from Baton Rouge, but I'm like, there wasn't nobody else from Oakland. We had folks like Marquise from Chicago or whatever, but it wasn't a lot of folks who were from those areas. And then I really mean from those areas. Like, if I'm saying Oakland, I'm not saying the Bay Area. I'm saying Oakland proper, East Oakland. You know what I'm saying? New Orleans, you're from the 7th Ward. New Orleans. Marquise is actually from the south side of Chicago and not Evanston. Like, Zach is really from Baton Rouge. All of that. So
that's the thing at Yale. People would be like, say like you're from, they say I'm from Los Angeles, but they live in like Apple Valley or
wherever.
There wasn't like they weren't from the exact spot, because like most people didn't know smaller towns or like things outside of like major cities in specific states. But finding people who had like similar backgrounds, who were like, yeah, I'm from an urban environment that like people know about, and like the cultures from different places are pretty similar. It's kind of rare. So like when you find people like that, it was like, yeah, like we gotta stay together, because like it's a grind to get through this school.
Right. And then it's also having people who you could talk to about anything, but you know they can at least relate to it. So when I'm telling folks about my brother being in prison at the time, or giving a story about when my brother got shot and how I was almost in that same situation, or dealing with the repercussions of him being shot because he went to prison within like a month or so after, plenty of people at Yale would love to hear that story and just be like, oh wow, that's crazy or amazing.
It's like storytelling.
Right, it's just storytelling. It's like, well, I'm going to go back to my life that I live, and this is not relevant, but to be around folks who know people who have been in similar situations, who got family members who are incarcerated, who know folks impacted by gun violence. It's like, I'm not saying if you don't have that background, you can't understand it and be charismatic and care about stuff, but I'm saying it's just different to talk to people who can relate to it and not feel like I'm just getting put on a pedestal to share my experience for everybody else to consume, and just, you know, it's different.
Like a movie, like
Exactly.
just listening to or watching a movie.
Right, it's like my life isn't a documentary film, it's like our shared experiences. Man, one day we're gonna do that.
So yeah, I mean, we talked a lot about like the culture at Yale and like how like the transition was. People probably want to know more about like what we did at Yale, more so what you did at Yale. So like, give them a little sample. Story.
No, one of the things a lot of people probably didn't know is that I was on the baseball team for a quick second.
Hot second.
Hot second. I grew up playing baseball. My junior year of high school, I was actually the MVP of my league.
Oh.
And my senior year, so then junior summer, I was in the circuit and started picking up lower level offers, though, like D3 offers in California schools and stuff like that. Because my grades was good also, so, you know, places like, okay, we wouldn't have to pull no strings to get them in or anything like that. And I was also kind of late getting on the recruitment circuit for baseball because I had played basketball for so many summers and was on the AAU circuit for that. So I hadn't played a summer since like my freshman, or going into my freshman year. So this is my first one in like 3 years. But senior year, high hopes. Then I ruptured my quad in like my fourth game I had played, and then missed my whole senior year. Luckily, I had enough highlight tape stuff to send to the different coaches, but since my grades were good enough to get into a lot of these schools that I wanted to go to strictly off of academics, which included Yale, I was already in when I sent the coach my highlight tape. And he was like, okay, just come to the team. You don't have to do like the normal walk-on tryout method, I guess. You just, you know, come and start working out with us.
Yeah.
Because they probably didn't have to pull strings or to get me in. And then I was on the team for a minute, got injured again, and then the team environment was just, it was just different. Being the only black dude on any sports team, especially with the amount of time that you spend with your team for collegiate athletics is
24/7.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. And you know, there's a lot of folks there. I mean, overall, folks was cool, but it was just like I didn't relate to them in the way that I would relate to other folks. So I haven't spent that much time on top of injuries. And I was just like, all right, I'm gonna just stop. So I just stopped in my freshman year after being on that for a little quick minute. Funny enough, though, everybody thought I was on the football team because I hung out with them all the time. And because I was black, obviously, too. People just would come up to me and say something.
They had a dude on that team who had dreads, and there was really like 2 dudes out of all 5,000 people who had dreads that length, so they kind of mixed them up all the time.
Right.
And then your name was Akintunde Ahmad, his name was Aaron Alt, so.
Right. Double A's on both of them. Yeah. We don't look alike at all, though. We just had dreads. Man, he was like 2-3 years older than us.
Yeah, he's like 3.
But yeah, anyway, you know how people's stereotypes be.
But it was funny because it definitely worked for you in certain situations.
Oh no, it would work. Cause, you know, we would get perks like, but yeah, people wasn't around. They don't know what a silver pass is and nothing like that. But.
So there was this pass at like this campus club called the Silver Pass, and yeah, certain people got them, and the dude who was on the football team, he had one. So then when they pretend like he was him,
Or
and
it
he
wasn't even like
lost
I
it.
pretended. I was just like, I walked in there. He just assumed that I was on the team and just gave me one. And then he would always say stuff like "good game" and stuff the weekend. But dude was cool. And then I started knowing him through other, because I was on planning board for like Black Solidarity Conference and stuff. So we started talking about that because that would generate a bunch of revenue for the company. Anyway, yeah. So it was
baseball was like the first thing that you got into it,
yeah. And then it was like Black Men's Union stuff, which probably wouldn't come as a surprise being a black man on the Ivy League campus. And I was in the board of that organization for a couple years. And you know, what that organization did is fairly self-explanatory. Conversations surrounding being a black male and just being a black person in the United States on Ivy League campus, all of that in general. And not just black people in the United States, but in the world abroad.
a lot of guys from Africa, a lot of guys from like UK, other countries. But just black people from all over.
Yeah, but that was cool though, because that was also like another opportunity for all of us to kind of get together and just have organized time to talk about stuff. Have debates about. I'm mad. They got a debate right now going on about the GOAT. And they put a picture of Kobe and Michael Jordan. Didn't even put LeBron in it, but whatever.
It's a conversation for another day.
Yeah, that's a whole other podcast. But yeah.
So, graduating from Yale, and then what was your background and everything? Like, what were your goals after college? Like, what did you want to do with like the degree, and how you move with your life?
So originally, I really thought I wanted to like go straight into like law. I was either gonna go to get like a PhD or law school. A PhD, I wanted to do in like African American studies, sociology, because I was a sociology major in undergrad, and I was just interested in governmental systems and structures and just learning the history of black people in the United States and black people across the whole diaspora, and just kind of understanding how we got to where we are now. And there was so many interesting studies in there. But then I was like, do I really want to go to school for 6 years, study this stuff, and then write books and stuff about it? And it was appealing to me, but the reason why I didn't do that was because a lot of times the stuff that folks write kind of stayed in that academic bubble. So when you're in it,
reach like the masses.
It's like when you're in it, and it's getting read by a whole bunch of other professors and academic students. But I wanted to write stuff that anybody could have access to and read and find value in stories. And then I was like, okay, maybe I go to law school, which is something that I'm still thinking about because I interned at a civil rights law firm that sued police departments for police misconduct and brutality. So representing victims of families who had gotten a family member killed. And that was back home in Oakland when I was doing that, and that's something that still interests me. But even in doing that, I'm like, I'm working here, and the stories that make the news are the ones that, you know, they have $1 million or more settlement. But what about all the other stories where it's like they hush settlement for $100,000 or $50,000 because the police slap somebody on camera or something, and it's like the damage isn't a life, so it doesn't get as much publicity, but it's happening all the time.
Right.
And I was like, there's so many stories out there that need to be told, including my own. And that's why I went to journalism school at Columbia and studied documentary film, because I was like, I want to tell stories in written form, but I also want to tell stories in video form, because I'm like, not everybody, just the reality of it, not everybody's going to sit down and read every article you put out. The hope is to persuade people to do that, but like, video is its own.
I mean, shit, we doing a podcast right now on camera.
People want to listen. People want to be able to write podcasts, listen while you on the go, and not have to. You know, you can do that while you drive or while you're on the train.
Right.
The same thing with videos, like being on the train or in transport. You can look at videos while you work out and all that type of stuff. So that's why I chose to do that. That's why I got my master's in, and that's what I hope to continue doing for these next couple years. I'm not somebody who would like just be like, okay, this is what I want to do, and I want to just do that for the rest of my life. I got a whole bunch of different ideas that I want to go through phases and do. And right now, I'm like the creative space of being able to come up with stories and learn about other folks and tell their stories for them while telling my own.
So would you say that, like, I guess like the documentary film journalism, like the, what would you call that space, like the journalism community? Would you like encourage people to join that, or like even if they have no interest going into a college, or how would you like talk about the space if someone's like open to writing and like doing something like what you do?
I think one of the big things is I want more people to tell their own stories and don't let other people tell them for you, because people will have, only person who understands your story in the way that it happened is you. And it's like somebody else will see it from the outside and write what they think is great. So but every year, basically, and we talked about this because it was us when we were seniors in high school, people get put on this pedestal of like, oh, look at so-and-so from this underrepresented community, this poor community, this tragedy happened to them, and like you can map it out. When college admissions come out in like March of this year, and then when people graduate in May and go to school, it's segments for folks who be like, okay, there's going to be an undocumented immigrant who will be broadcast for going to a top university. There's going to be somebody
who has some kind of gun violence in their past.
Gun violence, something. It's going to be somebody from a single parent home or somebody who was homeless at some point in their life.
So they got like categories of like these poor for me stories. So like, oh, now there's somebody now because they went to school. And then, but the underlying thing about a lot of these stories is that they don't account for all of the circumstances that made people be put in the situation where they had to overcome so much. Mm-hmm. And instead, the dangerous part of it is like, I'm saying, well, look, Tim is from 7th Ward, New Orleans. He, you know what I'm saying, his pops was away in the Army and this and that, but you don't see him complaining about it. He made it to get to where he was. And if y'all just worked a little harder, y'all can do the same thing. But it's like, no, that's not how it happens. Of course, hard work, dedication is part of it. But if you have people who are running 100-meter sprints and you just want them to finish, and one person has to do hurdles and carry a 45-pound plate, sure, some of them are going to get to the finish line, but the people who got a straight path are going to have it easier. And if you just broadcast to people who finish and say, well, if y'all worked hard, y'all could have did it, you're not accounting for the fact that they had a 45-pound weight and hurdles attached to them when they were getting through that. And I want like people listening or watching this to know that like the people that you see in the media with these stories, like kudos to them for getting there, but they're not the only ones, and it's not as rare as you see. It's like, I guess my background's not like as like tragic or like as hard, but there weren't articles about me graduating. There's obviously more people than just me and him and our friend group who had similar backgrounds, but right. It's like a narrative that the media is like portraying that like, oh yeah, this 1 in a million shot kid got in and look what he did. But like you said, like tell your narrative, and I guess like going into journalism or documentary would like give people more of a voice, or like this platform giving you a voice to talk to people who you might not reach on a daily basis.
Exactly.
Yeah. And
then right, it's always everything just exists inside of context. It's like, you know, it's so many factors that we could have a whole nother podcast on of those hurdles and weights that we were talking about, but yeah, it's just always more to the story than what folks put out there. Mm-hmm. And I had to write my own story and talk about me and my brother and why my brother was arrested. And the first coverage it was people would be in a couple lines in a long story. They'd just say, oh yeah, and it's so great because his brother was shot and then went to prison for 4 years because he was caught in a federal sting operation. But they don't say that he got conspiracy charges for having knowledge of crimes that other people were committing, and that the police can put people under the category of a gang that isn't actually a gang. And that's how the RICO Act works. Mm-hmm. It's like, oh, I know Tim and so-and-so and so-and-so all hang out, and so-and-so is the only one doing the crime, but how do we get as many of them incarcerated as possible? Oh, we make a law that says if you know about a crime and you're in an organized group, then you can also
be implicit.
Right, but the organized group boundary is where it's not something that exists. Like Oakland, there's no Crips, there's no Bloods, there's none of that. They were saying it was a 60-person gang when my brother got arrested. But it's like,
wouldn't you have heard about that gang?
Yeah, before? It's like it's not a gang. It's a group of friends that hang out, and some people didn't even know each other. There's 60 people they lived together. And it's like, how are they in a gang together and they don't even know each other? The first time they met was when y'all arrested them and put them all in the same jail. But
what's since I guess like including undergrad, since you graduated, what's like your favorite piece, film or journalism that you worked on?
That I did?
Yeah.
I mean, the one that I just wrote for the Atlantic was my favorite one, just because it went into all the details behind my brother's arrest, him being shot, and his media coverage, and just letting people know that it was so much more to the story than just, oh, I worked hard and I guess they tried to make it seem like my brother did it, or he was a bad kid and I wasn't, and it's like, nah. And it's also getting people to, because you know how many people came up to me thinking that I didn't have a dad? They thought that my dad had gotten killed and my dad was in jail. I was like, no, I grew up in a 2-parent household with both of my parents. But people just have this narrative that you can't be arrested or you can't be targeted by these policies if you have a 2-parent household with folks who work.
Yeah, back to like what I was saying earlier, like there's just so many different like backgrounds and stories and like you said, family narratives that are out there that like don't get the attention, so people like hone in on one and be like, okay, yeah, someone that looks like that, that's their narrative. You know what I mean?
And that's something that we face just every day, and how we look and how we dress is something that it's like we're always.
Like I look pretty good right now.
I'm saying we always have to account for how we will be interpreted based on how we look. You know what I'm saying? If I'm like, you know, a white student who wants to go to the Yale club probably won't think like, oh, I might want to dress as much. They just know when they go in there, they'll be accepted because, you know, they can do whatever, and people aren't going to second guess them belonging there. But if we go, I'm like, okay, maybe I should put on a collared shirt or something. And not because we're feeding the respectability politics, but sometimes we just don't feel like being bothered. And we know if we do this, it's less likely that we will.
Yeah. So
we just do it to make the ease of our life, you know what I'm saying, more likely to just ease through stuff as opposed to always having confrontation. But then other times it's like, nah, I'm just purposely dressed more street style, urban style to make people realize
make a point like someone like this can be here and deserves to be here.
Exactly. And not everybody that you see dressed like this acts like this. People aren't, you know, like you said, people are different regardless of how they look or dress.
What's I guess 5 year, like what's like a 5-year goal for you, like 5-year plan, like what do you see yourself, or something that you want to accomplish in the near future?
Man, so the one thing is I'm working on this. I've been working on a proposal for a memoir about me and my brother for a long time. So the reason why I wrote that article with the Atlantic was I wanted to just kind of get the story out there first and get some of the details out there and just see how many people would actually be interested in hearing my story and hearing more. And the amount of reads and feedback that I got from that gave me an idea of how I want to, you know, what topics I want to focus on. Because memoir, you could write about anything that happened in your life, but really focusing on me and my brother and having him write more of it. So I want to publish a memoir titled Oakland to Ivy, with the number 2 representing me and my brother.
That might be the title of this podcast.
Okay, that makes sense. But I want to publish that within the next 5 years, and that's what like my main side project I'm working on right now. And then the other thing I want to do is I'm in the process of doing is starting this clothing line that focuses on using West African patterns and cloths to kind of integrate that into like the urban, more street style of dressing that we have out here. Because when I studied abroad in Ghana, which I encourage everybody to do, study abroad if you can, and travel and experience other parts of the world.
Definitely.
I just kind of got into the fashion scene out there and started understanding how easy it was to really get clothing made, you know, going to fabric markets and picking out textiles that I liked, and, you know, just constructing stuff. But it's twofold. A, of course, it's a business plan, it's something that you want to profit from. But B, it's like every year it's a scandal around clothing brands that Black people rush to go support. And
H&M,
right, H&M, Gucci. There's been Tommy Hilfiger saying his clothes weren't made for Black people. Like everything, and folks still, regardless of what they do, proving time and time again and explicitly stating that they don't want Black people to wear their clothes, spending thousands of dollars on these brands. And I want to be like the dude Pyre Moss is, or like Virgil or Global Off-White or Fear of God. Like it's such a big opportunity for Black high fashion designer clothing brands to venture more into this space and you know, start making clothes and making that economy circulate more dollars generated from Black people. Because if you look at the NBA, every NBA games and NFL games are now, it's like a fashion runway every time.
Yeah,
and
before and after the game.
I'm sure I could write an article that mapped out how many Black designers, folks supported. Like if you looked at the top 50 ranked NBA players and their outfits and all of their games and did that, it would be a ridiculously low number. And there's no reason for that, especially in fashion, because it's like a lot of times people ain't wearing fashion because they really like stuff. They wear stuff because right, and it's the clout behind the brand that show folks like, oh yeah, this was a $10,000 trench coat, and it's like, well, it looks the exact same as the one that's $40 at Zara, right?
Yeah.
But because you show that it's this brand, it's that, so it's based on clout. It's like, why can't it be a black-owned brand that is making that?
I like the reason I started this platform was basically like to give people like you a voice, to like get a message out there. Like I used to like end the podcast with like someone's like opinion on something. I feel like the message you've been like promoting is just like take control of your own narrative and like be your own voice. And I feel like nowadays with all the technology, podcasts, videos, journalism, wherever it be, Instagram, social media, like everyone has the platform to use their voice.
Right.
And I feel like in the future, like everything's gonna be so cluttered that the only thing different about everyone is gonna be like their own story.
Exactly.
I think that's like something that people can take away from watching this or listening to this. I usually like to end the podcast with like 3 random facts. It's like you're not a little bit of knowledge.
Yeah.
You're from Oakland. How many cities in the world do you think start with O?
In the world?
Yeah, I looked this up. Might be wrong, Wikipedia, but if you had to throw out a random number.
I'm thinking like Oklahoma City.
Don't hurt yourself.
Start with I'm gonna say 60.
93.
Going that far.
93 cities in the world start with O. Not that many people know, but Charles Darwin, a scientist from a long time ago, he had a pet tortoise, which is kind of like pivotal in like him like studying evolution and natural selection.
Yeah.
That tortoise died in 2006. Like it's been a while ago, but Charles Darwin was like way back there. So I thought that was pretty interesting. And then podcasts, you know what the etymology of that word is? Because I was like, where did this word come from?
I have no idea. I don't know what the pod part is. Something. I'm assuming it has something to do with hearing, and a body part that revolves around the ear. But it might not.
No. So podcast is a combination of iPod and broadcast. that's where the word podcast came from.
Wow.
This a little disappointing, but
yeah, I'm thinking it was something like that's a. Never mind. But
it's like a pretty recently formed word. But yeah, that's quick facts with Tim on the Crew Talk. I want to thank you for taking your time to be on this. I think people are going to enjoy it.
Yeah, no, it's definitely. I can't wait to see how it grows.
Yep.
Starting off, but everybody's starting off somewhere.
Yeah,
Sticking
definitely.
with it.